Okay, guys. So, there have been about 1 billion requests for Tommy Uncut. We are going to get to those requests. I see you. I hear you. We're gonna do them. But there are some times, and basically, as was the dawning of everything that I've done as far as this new series goes, where I need to speak my mind. I need to talk about things that are fresh in my head. We've had not one, but 2 adventure paths reach the closing of Chapter 1, and we're going to talk about those in the next couple of weeks, because I have a lot to say about both. But what I want to talk about today is Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and how I almost TPK'd the Age of Ashes party in the first real encounter. This game is hard. This game is not easy. I believe there are many a naysayer out there in the wide world of the internet that do not like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, as they think, well, it's easy. It's watered down. No, it's not. Not in the slightest. At least not as far as Age of Ashes is concerned. Anyway, if you guys are liking Tommy Uncut, like, subscribe, ding the bell. If there's any topics you'd like to hear me talk about, like Kingmaker in 2nd Edition, I'm getting there, I promise. Actually, I'm about to run Kingmaker in 1st Edition for a new bi-weekly group. So that's exciting. Also, the Pal's Vengeance guys decided they instead wanted to build a kingdom. In any case, this episode of Tommy Uncut was brought to you in part by the Inn of Planar Crossroads. Thanks for your help, guys. Now let's hit it. We will begin with a bit of a story about how the Pathfinder playtest went for Black Dragon Gaming, in case, Will, you didn't watch us play Doomsday Dawn. I'm going to kind of paraphrase here. There may be some things I forget or omit, or combination of the two. Nevertheless, let's see. We very nearly TPK'd the party to Quicksand. That was fun and still really terrifying in 2nd Edition. There were several scenarios in Doomsday Dawn where the party didn't lose the scenario, but won in the worst way possible, setting buildings on fire, accomplishing tasks with something on the order of like a day left before bad things happened. To say nothing of the TPKs, of which there were 2 in Doomsday Dawn, one of which to a sea serpent, the other one to the big bad. Oh, by the way, we had to restart an encounter like 4 times. God, I don't remember. All of those wishes are coming back to haunt them in Carrion Crown, though. Funny how powerful magic can have effects we didn't think about. The game is not easy. There was a point very recently where I had to stop and ask myself, am I GMing against my players? Am I seeking to do them harm? The answer is no. What's happening is there's a very, very fine line between, and we're going to talk about this more in Wrath of the Righteous as well, between the enemy has an intelligence score, thus can strategize, especially if there are high-int, I won't say sergeant, yeah, I guess I will, high-int sergeants, lieutenants, generals, blase, in their ranks, versus here come an army of wolves. But it's the same story in 2nd Edition proper, in terms of Age of Ashes. Real quick, let me refer you to the encounter in question. So, obviously there's going to be some Age of Ashes spoilers. Fair warning. The premise for the combat is the party has gathered in proverbial, stereotypical, we need ye old adventurers town, because that town needs, I almost said yeets, that town likes to throw ye old adventurers out of cannon, sure, why not, adventurers to do things. The town is all gathered, or at least a sizable portion of it, in a town hall, which is set fire. From this fire, a fire method springs out. Now, my party has 6 players. So we had 2 fire methods, adjusting the encounter for what was on par for how to make encounters in 2nd Edition. The Town Hall fire is a hazard, a very, very scary hazard, that requires you to douse the flames. Seems easy enough, right? On the fire's turn in the initiative, the fire spreads into a number of additional squares equal to half the number of squares currently occupied, a minimum of 1, of course. The GM determines the squares the fire spreads into. The first part of how I screwed up this encounter, because there were a lot of moving pieces, what can I say? This is the first time I've had a hazard this complex in a game. The creature that ends its turn next to the flames takes a d6 of fire damage, and if you end your turn in the flames, it's 4d6 fire damage. Mind you, we are level 1. With a DC 17 basic reflex save. If they fail the save, on average, before resistances, that will come down 14 fire damage. Or, in layman's terms, a crap ton of fire damage for a level 1 character to have to deal with. To say nothing of if they fail the basic save and take double. That's what I screwed up. We'll talk about how that impacts it here in a sec. As turns go on, the fire opens up multiple doors and spreads farther and farther. Eventually, from turn 4 on, creatures inside the room take a d6 of damage from smoke inhalation. Of course, there are means of mitigating this. This is the only part of the encounter where there's any, if you have a brain, you can probably get around this. Oh. On the 5th turn, if anybody, and there were 40 NPCs in here, it goes down to 20 that the party has to deal with. They go unconscious, eventually they die. The first major kicker here is both the town council, which is assembled, and the spectators therein do not know how to use the fountain literally outside, about 150 feet away from the council chambers, to form a bucket brigade. The PCs must be like, hey, you. This is assuming the PCs aren't spending 3 actions to get... This is assuming the PCs aren't spending 3 actions to get by 2's people out of the burning building, or dealing with the methods, or trying to deal with the fire themselves. These guys are literally just pieces in the hazard that have no ability to think for themselves other than to freak out and cower, on top of the fact that the town is too inept to do anything about the fire. The guards don't come help with the fire unless the PCs ask for the guards to come help. Otherwise, they're too busy doing other things. Good, they'd probably just die from smoke inhalation anyway. And those methods are healing when they sit in fire. The fire starts out in a 10 foot by 10 foot area, that's 4 squares, which then becomes 6, adding 2, which then becomes 9, adding 3, and then there's a second fire, and it stands to reason those 2 fires can connect, becoming 1 fire for the purposes of adding more as it goes. Eventually, this adds up. It adds up in such a way that the fire methods will almost always be able to stride, use their breath weapon, when they're not feeling threatened, or if they're being hurt, stride, strike, stride back into the fire, because they have fast healing at the start of their turns. Literally the only fire method that went down in the fire, and since things don't die at 0, since we have codified dying and wounded now, it goes down, it's at dying 1, it gets up at wounded 1 at 2 hit points, then has a means of healing itself. Whilst you're fighting fire methods that want to heal in the fire, you're probably close to the fire, and it stands to reason that the fire might spread to you or on you should you happen to go down. By rights, our dwarf cleric of Torag died, and only did not die because I neglected to put the 46 fire damage that she critically failed on her, because falling in fire when you're dying is bad. And again, I would have to go back and watch where Bolix was moving on the board to determine if Bolix didn't die a miserable, horrible death as well. That's 2 of the 6 characters in the party dead, basically from jump. And now, friends, let me tell you why that's not a bad thing. Again, I think the biggest detractors of Pathfinder 2nd Edition do not like Pathfinder because it is simple, because it is watered down. There is nothing simple or watered down about that encounter. There's nothing simple or watered down about any of the encounters that I have played or GM'd in Pathfinder 2nd Edition or the playtest. The moving pieces don't come from 30-hour builds like they used to, and I'm not disparaging that at all. I still play Pathfinder 1st Edition, probably always will be a 3.5 fan. I'm just here to say that I think people have inaccurately labeled Pathfinder 2nd Edition as easy mode. Far from it. The codified 3-action system means that in combat, things can be really complex, really tactical, hazards being as terrifying as they are. Again, when was the last time you killed someone in your games by setting something on fire before 2e, right? So really, I'm starting to think that the people who do not, and let's not even talk about the zombie encounter that I did. 6 zombies versus 2 clerics, a wizard, an alchemist, a sorcerer, and a rogue. Seems pretty easy on paper, but in a 1-to-1 fight, if something happens to critically hit, you do a lot of damage really fast. And also, even the low-level creatures have so many moving parts that they're not just, I have 4 hit points and are staggered all the time, lol. No, they have things both that make them easier to kill, like weaknesses, and things like, in the case of the giant rat, filth fever that can literally kill you Remember, this is a low-level encounter, things that are moving around a lot and challenge the party from jump. In first edition, it was often said that the game didn't start until like 3rd-ish level. People are just waiting for all their feats to come online and things, but I never really heard that much that you lost characters at level 1 a lot. In 2nd edition, you're losing them if you're not careful all the time. The encounters seem to be constantly challenging, which then brings us back to the old point of the video, doesn't it? Pathfinder 2nd edition is really hard. I think the people who have said they didn't like 2nd edition because it seemed easy have yet to try it. Because this game is a lot of things. Simple is just not one of them.